Right, the next submission is Celeste Donovan. Welcome.
Hi, just want to introduce myself, Celeste Donovan and Kevin List. Thanks for the opportunity to speak on the important topic of representation, arguably one of the most critical issues the Council faces. The purpose of this review, we're told, is to see if current arrangements provide a fair and effective voice for communities. In this case, the question of representation is framed around specific questions: how many elected members, how they're elected, and what communities they represent. What it doesn't ask is whether the current system itself is working and how the system can be improved. The NBRA submission, which I'm making in a personal capacity, raises the issues around representation we believe should have been included in this review. It is less about boundaries and more about how people are consulted, what barriers there are to engagement, and how people can be better engaged in decision making. Polling in our New Brighton residence area feel that Council, in particular our Community Board, could do far better in local engagement. Seems that an overhaul of the current system is long overdue. This is backed up by various data, which reveals that only 5% of people aged between 15 and 35 feel listened to by local government. As we all know, the Council's own satisfaction survey polls at about 26% of residents who are happy with the way that engagement has been undertaken. And of course, Council's already aware of these shortcomings. So I guess the question comes back to, what are the solutions? Well, we're always seeking feedback from the residents in our area, and some of the things that we've heard as common themes include updated communication techniques, as well as calls for reforms to the current system. So the first thing that I'd like to suggest would be the structure of local government needs to be modernised and made more accessible. One option that we received strong support from an online poll was to have a more widespread adoption of technology, which is great to see here today. For instance, live streaming of community board meetings and the use of Zoom. We'd also like to see participants be able to attend meetings outside regular work hours and encourage greater participation from a wider diversity of people. Another popular suggestion was for councillors to hold drop-in sessions for people, and particularly local community groups, during the evening and weekends. And of course, some are already doing that. Secondly, the council here today this council is quite diverse in some respects, but many councils don't represent the catchments they represent. Looking around the country, there are less women, fewer non-European ethnicities, and hardly anyone below the age of 40. If we want to improve our poor representation rates and combat voter disengagement, we could start by following the lead of other councils and New Zealand by switching our local elections to SDV. As being noted by previous discussions and submissions, the former system of multi-councillor wards has led to greater gender equality and a more representative split between men and women. In summary, we think that meaningful change to ensure better representation requires the councils do more than tweak a few boundaries around electorates. Greater focus needs to be given to systemic and practical barriers to participation at community board level especially, and willingness to make radical changes to a system that is clearly outdated. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Sam?
Yeah, thank you very much for coming in and doing that. I enjoyed your submission. I'm just keen on the diversity aspect you touched on, and like you said, Christchurch is, in terms of diversity, probably outperforming the rest of the country. What's your view on, I guess, diversity versus best person for the job? Have you got a steer on that?
Well, I think the problem with this idea of meritocracy is that the best person for the job isn't always going to stand, because there is an implicit bias, and the research shows that, towards people who are I hate to say it, but white male boomers get seen as being sort of more electable, so therefore are more likely to stand. And I think also in the first past the post system, it makes it harder for more diverse candidates to stand, because there is not all votes are getting used towards the best, what people see as the best candidates. So people do strategic voting, which provides barriers to getting elected as well. So I think it's a bit of a tricky question.
So your view would be that the person that polls the most isn't necessarily the best person for the job?
Under first past the post, I don't think it is.
Right,
Under
okay.
STV, it's been shown to get more women elected, and I think there was a recent report that showed that areas that have adopted STV, communities are extremely happy with how it's performing and want to keep it. And as we can see there, it's something that's spreading around the country. I think we're slow adopters on that front.
Right,
So, but unfortunately I would assume there's an inherent bias within most councils to keep the systems that gotten the councillors who are currently elected.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Thank you.
It is too late to change it now
Yeah.
for the next election, but it's not too late to put it on the agenda again for the future. So I'm going to get some advice on that, because it may well be that we could even conduct a referendum at the next election, which would be getting turnout commensurate with the interest in changing the system, which might actually be quite a good model for increasing the turnout as well. So I'm going to get some advice on that. It can't be part of the representation review, but
Can I quickly answer that point?
Yeah.
I spoke to someone that was looking to lead that, Rosalie, who you'll be familiar with, Rosalie
Yeah.
Jenkins, and she said that was one option that they'd receive feedback could go ahead.
great.
And they'd receive feedback from the council, but I don't have the email in front of me to say that. And I do think it's a good way to get younger people engaged, because
Yeah.
they see it as kind of a more representative way to be involved.
Yeah. Well, I've had two hands up, and we've come to the end of the time. We're on a strict timetable, so I'm sorry. But thank you very much for your
Thank you.
submission. It was very good. Thank you. Helen Broughton.